Hello, my name is Andrew Jones. The presentation I have for you today is called An Analysis of Social Media Use and Influence on Mental Health. Essentially, my goal is to try to see how the rise of social media and all demographics can contribute to some mental health issues. I used a data set that was already kind of pertaining to the topic. So it had a lot of variables about social media and some really interesting ones, and then one or two mental health variables. So my project attempted to answer, does regular social media use affect mental health, and then is there a correlation between how one perceives themselves on social media and their mental health? So I'll go over the predictors first. So the first one was the total time, which is just the average time spent on social media. These were pretty much all categorical variables. I did have to change total time as the ranges of time were not very helpful, so I changed them a little bit to make them ordinal. No purpose, which is how much you're just scrolling or on social media without specific purpose in mind. And then comparison, how much you compare yourself to other successful people through social media. Validation, how much we seek validation through social media. And then the response variable, which is mental health, which is how they categorized it as depressed or down feelings in the individual. There were a total of 481 total surveyees. There were adults between ages 13 and 91. I can't believe a 91-year-old filled the survey out, but it's incredible. Most of them were between 21 and 26, so I thought that this pertained to my research goals. A little bit of the background. As we see, there's a lot of talk of social media on the rise, how this is going to be affecting our mental health, our physical health, etc. So I wanted to see how this phone usage, and specifically social media, could affect mental health. Most of them were, again, on a 1 to 5 scale because they were surveys. I'll explain a little bit about the scales in a second. And then just on a personal note, I am a youth ministry volunteer, so I see how the rise of social media use in teens is affecting their mental health pretty much weekly. So I just wanted to see how this can carry on into college-age kids and beyond that, which is the majority of the people being surveyed as it is. For the sake of time, I'm just going to hit 2 highlights for the data exploration, which is the response variable of mental health, the histogram. More than 50% of the individuals reported being between 3 and 5 on the scale, 5 being the worst depressed or down feelings, and 1 being the best. So there were a lot of people that felt more depressed or down as they reported, which is already something to be explored. And then I did want to go into how total time, this is just one variable that I picked to see how the trend can be somewhat linear, although it's discrete, which again I'll get into in a second. But there seems to be a positive, somewhat linear trend in these values, so it's worth exploring further. So the mental health variable was treated as continuous, representing overall mental health scores, which leads me to what these scales mean. So these scales are called Likert scales. It's often used in psychology. They're just ordinal scales, but in this study, as we're trying to understand the relationship and comparing mental health in these predictors, I'm going to treat them as numeric and continuous. Prior literature demonstrates that I can use this Likert scale as feasible in linear models, multiple linear models, because they're roughly equal for practical and analytical purposes to continuous values. So they're easier to interpret and use for our goals in mind. So I started off with one model. I got pretty lucky. There were these 4 predictors, and all of them ended up being significant, which I will see in a second, which is pretty awesome. So the only thing I could think of doing was dropping the validation, and the reason being for that was it had the lowest t-value compared to the other ones, and one of the highest p-values. So I just thought, why not? Let's throw that one out, because maybe it'll have more meaningful explanation. It did not end up having a huge effect on the model. The R-squared value was roughly equivalent. The Model 1 with all of the predictors was about 27%, whereas the Model 2 revision was almost at 27, just roughly under. So getting rid of the variable didn't have an impact on the model. And then lastly, just like a research note, getting rid of one of these kind of correlated variables would not be great in explaining power for this model. We don't want to get rid of anything that's significant because, number one, we have variables that all contribute to mental health. So I wanted to keep them in for those reasons. So this is the output for the linear model, and I'll be referencing that for the discussion, but I did want to get into the diagnostics, and I'll just go through it briefly. It did somewhat go through all the assumptions. They were okay. There were a few problems with the overall structure of scale location and residual versus fitted, but seeing as they're ordinal and categorical, these lines make sense. So we were able to use the multiple linear regression model in this case. Then I'll go back to this. So just hitting on the highlights, the coefficients for these were not very big. The coefficients weren't very large, and the reason being for that is because we're using this ordinal scale. But these somewhat insignificant coefficients might seem insignificant, but in reality, for trying to understand the relationship this has on the dependent variable, these little numbers are actually really important. And then, not to mention, we're dealing with actual individuals here. So any of these values or predictors that can have an impact on mental health are important for us. Comparison and no purpose were the 2 greatest predictors, with total time and validation being the lowest. And again, that's why I wanted to compare the model without validation, but it ended up being decent. So the residual standard error was approximately 1.12, suggesting the average prediction deviates by about 1 point, which is consistent for psychological survey data. And then some practical significance for this model. It highlights that even moderate increases in these types of predictors for psychological experiments have meaningful impacts on mental health when using these scales. And given the scale of what we're trying to understand with mental health, small increases or decreases matter a lot. So what I can conclude is that this model does address the research questions. It shows that both total time and the rest of the perception on social media were significant in helping to understand the relationship on mental health, and the increase in all of these variables did have a negative effect on the dependent variable of mental health. And then lastly, just some limitations. Obviously, mental health and psychology as it is a very broad field with many things impacting mental health. So just depressed feelings isn't enough to categorize how somebody is going to be affected just by social media. So there's a myriad of different feelings that can go into this for overall mental health. So in the future, that could be something that's explored. Yeah. Thank you very much.